Today, we're diving deep into ancient history, specifically to the heart of Central Asia, a place where strong winds swept across vast plains and mountains cut through the sky like sharp blades. This is where a legendary warrior queen carved her name into history, not just with blood, but with the blood of the most powerful man in the known world. This is the incredible story of Tomyris, queen of the Beheaded, and how she orchestrated a revenge so brutal against Cyrus the Great that his name echoed with fear for generations. Get ready for a tale of power, betrayal, and ultimate vengeance. To really get why Tomyris was so furious, we first need to understand the guy she was up against, Cyrus the Great. Picture this. It's the 6th century BCE. Rome was basically a tiny village, and Athens was just starting to mess around with democracy. But way out east, a massive empire was rising, the Persian Empire, led by Cyrus II. This empire was mind-blowingly huge. It stretched from the Mediterranean Sea all the way to the Hindu Kush Mountains, from the Caucasus down to the Persian Gulf. Seriously, humanity had never seen anything like it. An empire of this scale ruled by a single person. But Cyrus wasn't just some brute who conquered everything in his path. He was actually pretty revolutionary in how he governed. Unlike other cruel rulers before him, he often let the people he conquered keep their own religions, customs, and even their local leaders. For example, when he took over Babylon, he didn't massacre its people. Instead, he famously freed the Jews from their captivity. His Cyrus cylinder, an ancient clay tablet, is even considered by many to be one of the first human rights documents in history. Pretty wild, right? But don't get it twisted. His kindness wasn't just because he was a good guy. It was a calculated move. Showing respect for local cultures helped keep his massive empire stable. The image of a liberator was a clever mask for his boundless ambition. Cyrus the Great, as he would come to be known, had no plans to stop. Each conquest just fueled his hunger for more land, more power, and more glory. By 530 BCE, after taking over kingdoms that had existed for thousands of years, his gaze turned north. He looked beyond the Jaxartes River, which is now called the Sirdaria. There, in the sprawling plains of Central Asia, lived a nomadic people called the Beheaded. These were fierce warriors who lived in harmony with the harsh, unforgiving nature of the steppes. They didn't have walls or cities. The sky was their roof, and the horizon was their only limit. And leading them was a widowed queen whose very name would make Cyrus seriously regret his ambitions, Tomyris. We don't know a ton about Tomyris's early life. Historical accounts, mostly written by men back then, rarely bothered with the details of women's lives, even queens. But here's what we do know. When she took the throne after her husband died, she quickly proved she was a formidable leader. Unlike many queens who were just temporary stand-ins, Tomyris personally led her armies and earned the respect of her people. Not just because of her birth or marriage, but because she was genuinely skilled and deserving. When Persian messengers showed up at her nomadic court, Cyrus's intentions were disguised as diplomacy. The great king proposed marriage to Tomyris. To anyone looking from the outside, it might have seemed like a smart political move. She'd keep her title as queen, but her people would become part of the Persian Empire without a single drop of blood. But Tomyris wasn't easily fooled. She saw right through the proposal. It wasn't a marriage request. It was an attempt to conquer her people without a fight. Her answer was clear and firm. The Beheaded would remain free, and she would be neither wife nor subject to the Persian king. This rejection hit Cyrus hard. It was an unbearable insult. The man who had conquered entire nations couldn't believe he was being refused by a barbarian queen of a nomadic tribe. If he couldn't have the Beheaded through diplomacy, he'd take them by force. He ordered his generals to assemble a massive army and march beyond the Jaxartes, right into Tomyris' lands. When news of the war preparations reached the queen, she sent a final message to Cyrus. "King of the Persians, give up your plan because you don't know if it will actually benefit you in the end. Rule your own people and let me rule mine. But I know you won't take this advice because you can't live in peace." Tomyris' prophetic words were completely ignored. Cyrus pushed forward with his army, building bridges across the Jaxartes to invade Massagetae territory. But the queen, showing incredible strategic wisdom, didn't try to stop his initial advance. She let the Persians cross the river, entering territory she knew like the back of her hand, but which was strange and hostile for them. And that's when Cyrus made his first fatal error. An error born from his arrogance and underestimation of his enemy. Following the advice of Croesus, a former king he'd conquered who now served as his advisor, Cyrus came up with a cunning plan. He decided to exploit what he thought was the Massagetaes' weakness, their love for wine, a drink unknown in their culture at the time. The Persian army set up a camp with minimal guards, leaving behind a huge amount of wine and food. Then, they pretended to retreat. Cyrus waited for the nomads to attack the seemingly undefended camp. Initially, the plan worked perfectly. A group of Massagetae warriors led by Tomyris' son, Spargapises, discovered the camp. They easily defeated the small guard, and having no experience with alcohol, they drank themselves into a stupor with the leftover wine. In the dead of night, while the nomadic warriors were passed out from the alcohol Cyrus attacked, the Massagetae, unable to fight in their drunken state, were easily defeated. Many were killed and others were captured, including young Spargapises, the queen's son. When he woke up and realized what had happened, how his youthful naivety had betrayed his people, he begged to be set free from his chains. When his request was granted, in an act of desperation and honor, he took his own life. The news of her son's death hit Tomyris like a lightning bolt. Her grief didn't paralyze her. Instead, it transformed into an icy, calculating, and absolutely relentless fury. She sent a second messenger to Cyrus with words that should have made the conqueror seriously reconsider his campaign. "Bloodthirsty man, don't brag about what you've done. You conquered my son with wine, that poison you fill yourselves with until you go mad, not in fair combat. Now hear my words well. Leave these lands and return to your empire. Forgive the injury of capturing a third of my army through trickery. If you refuse, I swear by the sun, Lord of the Massagetae, that I will quench your thirst for blood, no matter how insatiable it may be." Cyrus, high on his own legend, ignored the warning. He'd conquered Babylon, defeated the powerful kingdom of Lydia, and even subjugated Egypt. He wasn't about to back down from some savage woman of the steppes. This, he believed, would just be another conquest in his unstoppable rise to glory. What followed went down in history as one of the greatest military defeats ever suffered by a conquering empire. Tomyris rallied all the Massagetae tribes under her command. These were mounted warriors, hardened by the harsh steppe life, who could ride for days without stopping and hit a target with an arrow from hundreds of yards away. They converged to face the invader. The battle was bloody and decisive. The Persians, with their heavy infantry and tactics suited for sieges or open fields in Mesopotamia, found themselves at a huge disadvantage on the open plains. Here, the speed and mobility of the Massagetae horsemen could be fully exploited. Mounted archers would attack and withdraw before the Persians could even react. Cyrus fought with the bravery that had made him legendary, even leading charges into enemy lines. But even the greatest conqueror the world had ever seen couldn't overcome the combination of hostile territory, a tactically superior enemy, and the pure fury of a mother seeking revenge for her dead son. In the heat of battle, the unimaginable happened. Cyrus the Great fell. The man who built the largest empire the world had ever seen, whose name made kings tremble, was defeated and killed in the plains beyond the Jaxartes. But it's what happened after his death that ensured this story would be told for centuries. According to Herodotus, one of the first great historians, Tomyris ordered her men to search for Cyrus's body among the dead. When they found it, she commanded that his head be cut off and brought to her. What followed was an act as symbolic as it was horrific. Tomyris took a wineskin, a container made of animal skin used to hold liquids, and ordered it to be filled with human blood. Then, grasping Cyrus's decapitated head by the hair, she plunged it into the blood, proclaiming, "I live and have conquered you in battle, but you destroyed me by taking my son through trickery. Now, as I promised, I shall quench your thirst for blood." This brutal act of vengeance, dipping Cyrus's head in blood, wasn't just gratuitous cruelty. It was a powerful statement, a declaration to the world and to history that even the mightiest of men, if driven by limitless ambition, would meet their end. The conqueror who had spilled the blood of so many peoples now had his own blood, or at least his head, bathed in the blood of his victims. Now we have to hit the pause button and ask, how much of this narrative is actually true? Like many ancient events, this story comes to us mostly through Herodotus, who wrote it about 75 years after it happened, basing his account on oral reports. We know for sure that Cyrus died in a campaign against a northern nomadic people. Later Persian inscriptions mention that he was buried in Pasargadae, his capital, which suggests his body was recovered, partially contradicting the decapitation story. Modern archaeologists and historians debate the exact details. Some think Tomyris' story might have been exaggerated by the Greeks, who like to portray their enemies, the Persians, as being defeated by barbarian peoples. Others point out that the idea of a great conqueror being defeated by a woman served as a powerful moral lesson about the dangers of hubris, excessive pride, or self-confidence. Nevertheless, archaeological evidence confirms that the Massagetae were indeed a powerful group of nomadic tribes, and multiple sources beyond Herodotus mention Tomyris and her victory over Cyrus. The Roman historian Justin, for example, described her as fighting not just to defend her freedom, but as a queen avenging her realm. The consequences of Cyrus's death were huge. His son, Cambyses II, inherited the vast empire, but not his father's political genius. Cambyses became obsessed with conquering Egypt, a campaign Cyrus had started. He neglected internal stability, and after his death, a civil war broke out until Darius I restored order and expanded the empire even further. As for Tomyris, her fate after this monumental victory is uncertain. Historical records, which were so focused on male kings and generals, rarely followed the stories of women, even those who defeated the greatest conquerors. Some traditions say she ruled for many years in peace, having secured her people's safety by making it clear that no empire, no matter how great, would dare attack them again. Others suggest she was eventually defeated by rival tribes. What remains undeniable is the legacy of her victory. In a world where women were often erased from narratives of power, Tomyris achieved something extraordinary. She ensured her name would be remembered, not as the wife or mother of some great man, but as a warrior queen who defeated the most powerful conqueror of her era. Tomyris' story also gives us a powerful way to look at how true power often goes beyond limitations imposed by gender, race, or social background. In an age when women rarely had a say in matters of state, a barbarian queen from a nomadic people showed strategic brilliance and military leadership superior to that of the ruler of the greatest empire the world had ever known. The clash between Cyrus and Tomyris also represents the eternal conflict between settled civilizations and nomadic peoples. The Persian Empire, with its cities, roads, and irrigation systems, represented what the Greeks called civilization. The Massagetae, with their tents, horses, and life in constant movement, represented what both Persians and Greeks called barbarism. Yet it was the barbarian who triumphed over the civilized, a pattern that would repeat throughout history, from the Huns against Rome to the Mongols against China. The final image, Cyrus's head immersed in blood, remains one of the most powerful metaphors in ancient history. It's a graphic reminder that even the mightiest empires find their limits, that unchecked ambition often leads to destruction, and that sometimes the most fitting revenge is one that perfectly mirrors the original crime. Tomyris didn't just defeat Cyrus, she turned him into a symbol. The head of the conqueror, bathed in the blood he so coveted, became a warning to all future emperors, kings, and tyrants. The thirst for power, territory, and glory is never satisfied, and those who try to quench that thirst often meet an end as bloody as their ambitions. When we think of great conquerors of antiquity, names like Alexander the Great, Julius Caesar, and Genghis Khan immediately come to mind, but we rarely remember Tomyris. Yet, her victory against Cyrus deserves to be remembered, not just as a decisive moment in history, but as proof that even the most established narratives of power can be challenged and rewritten. In the steppes where the Massagetae once galloped, the wind still blows ceaselessly. There are no monuments to Tomyris, no city bearing her name, no empire tracing its lineage to her. Nevertheless, her story, the story of the queen who bathed Cyrus's head in the blood he so coveted, continues to echo through the centuries, a powerful reminder of the limits of power and the terrible price of boundless ambition. What do you think about Tomyris's revenge? Do you think it was justified or too extreme? Let me know in the comments below.